Hello, Wealth Tycoons! The story of Hummer begins in the dusty world of military activities. In the 1980s, the U.S. Army needed a tough, all-terrain car that could handle the worst conditions, for which the high mobility, multi-purpose wheeled vehicle, or Humvee, came into existence. It was big, tough, and made to go where no other car could. But things didn't really work out well for the brand. Why? Let's find out. Hummer was great for going up and down steep hills, crossing streams, and getting around rough territory. Soldiers loved how tough it was, and it quickly became a sign of strength and dependability. The twist, though, is that people other than soldiers fell in love with the Humvee. Arnold Schwarzenegger got one for himself when he saw a group of Humvees on a movie set in the early 1990s. Because he was so interested in the car, AM General tried releasing a civilian version of this giant car. The Hummer H1 was born in 1992. It was more than just a car. It was a monster. It was made to look and feel like its military cousin. Driving it on normal roads was like driving a tank. Some people liked the Hummer H1, but not all of them did. The price was way too high. It was too big, and it was rough. But it was great for people who wanted to state with the car they drove. GM bought the Hummer brand in 1999 because they saw its promise. Their plan? Do something bold like the H1 but more common. When GM took over, the Hummer family grew. The first one was the Hummer H2, which came out in 2002 and was a bit smaller and better made. Then, in 2005, the baby Hummer H3 came out. It was made to be cheaper and easier to drive. For a while, Hummer could not be stopped. Sales went through the roof, and the name became well known. People loved this car for very specific reasons. It wasn't just a car, it was a statement on wheels. For starters, it had a unique shape. Not only did Hummers fit in, they made people pay attention. Because they were so unique, you could spot one from a mile away and never forget them. Then there was the strong picture they showed. The fact that celebrities were endorsing it made it even more appealing. Hip-hop artists, athletes, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and other famous people loved the Hummer, and their support made it a cultural icon. Of course, you would think it was cool if your favorite star drove one. Also, don't forget that it can go off-road. Even though most Hummer owners never took their cars off-road, the fact that they knew they could handle the roughest terrains gave them an unfair advantage. As with many good things, some things didn't work in favor of the Hummer's craze. Not only did these problems hurt its reputation, they eventually brought it down. The Hummer used to be a sign of power, wealth, and excitement, but as times changed, it quickly turned into a sign of waste and extravagance. Yes, you heard that right. It happened. Fuel economy, or rather the lack of it, was one of the biggest problems. People knew that Hummers used a lot of gas. The average gas mileage for the H2 was a terrible 10 miles per gallon. In comparison, hybrid cars like the Toyota Prius, which were becoming more famous at the time, could get over 50 miles per gallon. When gas costs started going up in the middle of the 2000s, it became very expensive to fill up a Hummer's huge tank. Many people stopped seeing the point of having such an inefficient car. At the same time, there was a shift in culture around the world toward caring more about the earth. Everyone was thinking about lowering their carbon impacts because climate change was getting a lot of attention. Rising sales of hybrid and electric cars were seen as a smart and environment-friendly choice. Unfortunately, Hummer stood for the opposite. Environmental groups were not afraid to say bad things about Hummer. They did this by protesting, boycotting, and giving them a lot of bad press. Having a Hummer was not just seen as a financial drag anymore, it was also seen as socially unacceptable. Driving one was like being the reason for climate change, and it was hard to get rid of that shame. In addition to being bad for the earth and fuel, Hummers were also very expensive to own. In its first form, the consumer H1 cost more than $100,000, making it out of reach for most people. Even the H2 and H3 models, which were less expensive, were not cheap, and having a Hummer was not just about how much it cost to buy. It could get expensive to fix things, and keep up with upkeep, especially for a vehicle like the Hummer, which is so unique and complicated. Some people could explain the cost as a luxury when times were good, but when the economy got worse, it looked like a bad idea to spend that much on a car, which makes sense. Lack of flexibility was one of the important problems with the brand. Other automakers were making cars that used less gas in response to changing customer tastes, but Hummer stuck to its original formula of making big, powerful cars that used a lot of gas. The brand didn't try very hard to change or grow. Electric and hybrid cars, like the Toyota Prius, were becoming more popular because they were useful and good for the environment. At the same time, Hummer kept making cars that got only about 10 miles per gallon on average. People began to think that Hummer was out of date and a waste of money. The brand didn't change its approach even as criticism grew, which made it open to new trends. Hey, if you are enjoying watching this video so far, we have a lot more waiting for you ahead, but you can appreciate our efforts in creating this video by giving us a thumbs up. It becomes a huge motivation for us. Moving further, then there was the financial collapse of 2008, which was the last straw for Hummer. Families were hit hard by the crisis, and many had to cut back on spending and focus on what was most important. In those times, practical cars that use little gas became the smart choice, while big fancy SUVs like Hummers lost popularity. Sales fell sharply, and General Motors, which owns Hummer, was in a lot of trouble. That crisis put GM out of business in 2009, and as part of their plan to fix things, they had to get rid of names that were not doing well. With falling sales and a bad reputation, Hummer was an easy victim. For the brand, it was the end of an era. When you look back, it's easy to see why Hummer failed. It couldn't last in a world that cares more and more about saving energy and being good to the environment because it uses too much fuel. It refused to change with changing customer tastes, sticking to its image as an oversized gas guzzler. It became clear that Hummer didn't belong in the new, more realistic economy when the financial crisis hit. People needed cars that were reliable, cheap, and good at using gas. They didn't need expensive, flashy signs of wealth. General Motors, GM, didn't give up on the Hummer name right away, even though sales dropped sharply. They looked for ways to save it so that the Hummer name would live on. They tried very hard to sell the name to Sichuan Tengzhong Heavy Industrial Machinery, a Chinese company. The hope was that this new owner could give Hummer a new lease on life and sell it abroad, especially in China, where SUVs were becoming popular. But things did not go as planned. The deal had to get permission from both Chinese and US regulators, which was a big problem. It was also the worst possible time because the global economy was unstable, and it was hard to find buyers or investors ready to take the risk. People were also losing interest in the Hummer name because it was seen as wasteful and full of extras. In the end, these problems were too big to solve. The GM company officially said in 2010 that they would no longer be making Hummers. When the last Hummer left the factory in May 2010, it marked the end of an era for the once iconic car. In the business world, Hummer's story should be used as a lesson. It serves as a warning that no matter how popular a product is, it needs to be able to adapt to new situations and understand how the economy and culture are changing to stay relevant. Because Hummer couldn't change with the times, it went from being a symbol of excess to something from the past. Even though Hummer failed, it left a great legacy. People still remember it as one of the bravest and most famous car names of its time. The Hummer was a sign of strength, excitement, and a big-heartedness that stuck with people. People still talk about and feel nostalgic about the Hummer name years after the company went out of business. The story is not over yet, though, which is very interesting. GM has chosen to bring back the Hummer in recent years, but this time with a more modern look. The new Hummer is being thought of as an all-electric car. Yes, you read that right. The big car that used to use a lot of gas is now going green. This change is not just brave, it's a big deal. A brand that was once attacked for being bad for the environment is now being turned into a symbol of sustainability by GM. The electric Hummer is supposed to keep the brand's toughness and rugged appearance while also using the newest technology. Early looks show a futuristic-looking, innovative, and environmentally friendly vehicle with a lot of speed and the ability to go off-road. So far, the reaction has been mostly positive, getting both car fans and people who care about the environment excited. GM wants to change the brand's history by bringing back Hummer as an electric car. They want it to go from being a symbol of excess to a leader in green adventure. This is a risky move that could start a new era for Hummer, one that values its famous past while looking to the future. Hummer's rise and fall is not just the story of a car brand, it's also a lesson in how quickly success can disappear if you don't change. At its height, the Hummer was a sign of power, wealth, and a brave way of life that many people found fascinating. But people's needs for cars changed as time went on. They changed, but Hummer didn't, and that was a mistake that ended in its demise. The value of evolution is one of the most important things to learn from Hummer's story. A brand has to change to stay current, no matter how well known or popular it is. The Hummer didn't. While its competitors moved toward more fuel-efficient and environmentally friendly models, Hummer stuck to its image of being big and gas-guzzling. What made it unique in the beginning turned out to be its biggest flaw over time. It's also important to pay attention to what the market is saying. By the middle of the 2000s, it was clear that customers wanted more useful and environmentally friendly choices, but Hummer didn't pay attention to the trend. There was a gap between what Hummer sold and what people wanted, which made the brand seem old and out of touch. In the end, time was a very important factor in Hummer's death. During a time of economic growth, when people like to celebrate extravagance and wealth, the brand did very well. The market changed a lot, though. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, it became clear that Hummer was flawed when people were trying to save money and focus on what they needed. Its high prices and lack of usefulness stood out. People say that timing can make or break even the strongest brands. The story of Hummer's rise and fall is interesting, but it also serves as a lesson that having a great product is not enough to be successful. You need to be able to adapt, be aware, and understand the world around you. The fact that Hummer is back as an electric car shows that failing doesn't mean the end. You can learn, get better, and try again. We don't know if the new Hummer will be a hit or not, but one thing is for sure. The brand still knows how to come up with something interesting. What do you think about Hummer's electric car? Do share your opinion on this with us in the comments section below. If you want to see any particular business story, mention it in the comments section and we will cover it for you. You can also check out the existing business story videos on our channel. If you enjoyed watching the video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. See you soon in another such video.